Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you back. We're excited about what you're going to learn today from Nick. We've got a special guest today. His name is Nick Silva. Nick is someone that we've been kind of watching for a while. You guys know we're really picky about who we bring on here. We are, you know that we're rule breakers. Our whole mantra is just because it's the way it's always been done does not mean that that's the way that it has to be done. In fact, a lot of times what we need to be doing is breaking the quote rules that everybody says is the way it needs to be done. And Nick is somebody who does that. He's a digital entrepreneur. So let me introduce him a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you some questions that'll help them get to know you a little bit better before we get into the business stuff. But he's a live broadcast producer, business coach, he's a speaker, and he is going strong in his business. He's the founder of digital media company Funnel Factory. And so what he does is he helps people with all the digital stuff. We'll get into some details. We're going to learn some things from him about that. He's also the founder and executive producer for a show. It's called Launch My Live. So check that out. And remember, we'll put in the show notes, we'll put all of this information so you can find him. He teaches people how to become a content machine and dominate the media. And he teaches people how to do it with only a 45-minute video per week, which is huge because that's a time saver. And you guys know one thing I love is collapsing time frames. And so that's one of the things that we were, I don't know if you know this, Nick, but that was one of the reasons we were interested as well. But he is best known for being an early adopter and a pioneer of independently like producing and distributing TV shows. So if you want to know how to get the word out in your business and do it through digital marketing and digital, well, we call it social media, but there's so many more platforms. He's your guy. He's really your guy. He's served technology consultant for Fortune 500 companies. So this isn't somebody who just, I'm starting a business. Okay. He was a recipient of the NASA Space Grant Scholarship while he was studying chemical engineering in Arizona. His company does all the editing, the distribution of the shows across all the social media platforms. And we'll let him talk to you more about that. He's passionate about live streaming. In fact, at the beginning, before we got started, I was kind of wanting to pull out of him something that he was passionate about, and it got directly, pretty quickly into live streaming. So we're going to ask him some questions about that. Big into fitness, as you can tell by looking at him. He enjoys weightlifting and a lot of physical stuff. So music, photography, traveling. You sound like you're pretty well-rounded, Nick. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
But he's also, the NASA grants. He's been, he's been honored in several different areas. And so we're super excited to have you here. Number one, tell us a little bit more about I like people to be able to get to know you a little bit better, kind of on a personal level. So tell me a little bit talks about the physical stuff that you like, but like hiking, what do you love?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for bringing me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. That was, a huge hype up of my background. I promise you, I'm not that special. I actually just got back from Austin, Texas. So I flew in last night. I started my digital nomad journey, which is, getting popular about 3 weeks ago. So I came back to Scottsdale, live in beautiful Scottsdale right now. I have 1 week left here. I'm going to clear out the rest of my apartment, and then I'm just kind of jet setting around the world. So that's exciting.
Wait. So what are you going to do?
In terms of traveling?
Yeah, where am I going? Why you're giving up your apartment?
I gave up my apartment. I sold all my stuff. I did this a couple months ago. I was actually planning this about 9 months ago when I quit my job. So one of the reasons that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship or even just starting my own company was because I wanted to travel full time. And that was kind of a vehicle to do it. I needed a Wi-Fi connection and I needed a digital business. And so set that plan up 9 months ago. I quit. And, 3 weeks ago, I started the travel journey.
So what would you say to people? Because there are people who want to quit their job, but they're too scared. They're just too scared. What advice would you give?
Yeah, it's tough, honestly. And the rule breakers is probably the perfect, name for it. It's going to be a really scary feeling. You're not going to feel ready when you go to actually quit your job. You're never going to be fully prepared. And it really comes down to what you want. What type of lifestyle do you want? And, what is important to you? And if you know what's important to you and you want to be an entrepreneur and your current position, your current job isn't providing the things that you truly want, you might be happy in your current job, but if you don't have the type of growth opportunities, or maybe you want to start, drop shipping or start, traveling the world or do e-com, things that, are out of the norm, life's too short. That's really the best question I have. I mean, I'm 26. I don't have any family. I'm single. And, I'm not getting any younger. And for me, it was kind of like, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to figure it out. because I had a good corporate job and I could have stayed in that position and worked my way up the corporate ladder. But at some point in time, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was like, okay, if I quit and I fail, I could always go back to that. I got to at least try. And even if I fail several times, eventually I think I'm going to figure it out. And that was kind of my mindset going in. But when I quit, I was committed and I didn't really care about the outcome. I definitely want to get results. I'm a results type of person, but it was more about the experience of doing it and really just taking that chance on myself. And I remember going into my boss and putting in the 2 weeks and I was like, hey, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. I'm gonna start a company and I'm gonna go travel the world. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy, and definitely had some.
What did you say?
Yeah, definitely had some rough patches. They weren't that surprised because, at that job, I was always coming up with, I have the entrepreneurial spirit. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs too, who that's where you're really going to have to ask yourself is, do you like that structure, but still being able to come up with creative and innovative ideas? And there's a place for that in companies. People need people that have a entrepreneurial and innovative mindset, but they do like the structure. They're more entrepreneurs. They like having that, I don't want to say guaranteed job, but they have a little bit less risk tolerance than someone who is just like, I'm going to go start a company. Because entrepreneurs they're special types of individuals sometimes. A
little bit crazy,
so
like Steve Jobs always said.
there's something different going on up there. They just kind of see the world a little bit through a different lens. But everyone has their own perspective. So, but yeah, that's my advice for quitting.
Yeah, I love what you said, because the CEO of a huge company doesn't have the same skill set as an entrepreneur. They still need those people. They still need the crew. And so, okay, is there a certain strategy that you had, like for people who are thinking, I really want to do it, I think I'm willing to take the risk, I just don't know how, I don't know exactly what steps to take? Was there a strategy you went through that you said, okay, I asked myself these questions, or like, was there something, or you just...
There was a couple, if I could go back in terms of strategy, I knew I could go and get business. So I had a strong skill set in technology and building websites and building sales funnels. And that's what I relied on. That was my entry into entrepreneurship. I really just went into freelancing and consulting for building sales funnels. So I knew I could make money and acquire clients. I had only, for the previous week, I got my first client. I pitched them on building a sales funnel. I closed them. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. So if I could go back, I honestly would have given myself a little bit more runway. And in the beginning, if you're starting out, you really got to focus on sales, and don't worry too much about branding. That stuff's important, but you got to deliver a service. You got to focus on sales and getting clients. And I would have worked probably a part-time job, which I wouldn't have been embarrassed to go get a job at like a Starbucks or something. I probably could have done something more than that part-time, but to have some type of consistent income. I had a savings in place, and that was fine, but I probably would have, drove Uber or something like that, something part-time that I could have just had consistent cash and then focused on building the business. And in that way, I would have, there's that hustle of, okay, I have my savings, I have no money coming in, I have to go make it happen, right? And that was fine. That was good. It ended up being fine. It's not like it really got anything really bad, but a couple of weeks in, you don't want to have that pressure when you're really trying to build your business, because it starts to get in the way of what you're actually trying to do. It kind of clouds your judgment a little bit, and it is good to work under pressure. But I think in the beginning, you really just want to focus on your craft, and you want to give yourself time to do that. And so I probably would have got a part-time job and did that in the morning, and then focused on building my business on the back half, because you don't really know when you're going to really catch that break. At least for me, at 26, and when I quit, you don't really know when you're finally going to, depending what it is you're doing, when you're going to catch that momentum, or you're going to figure out that right. If you're cold emailing people or cold calling people, or you're getting referrals from customers, at some point in time, something shifts and you catch momentum. But it happens differently for everyone. I have friends that started to become entrepreneurs, and the first month or two, they were doing great. And then it took me about 6 months to really catch that momentum where things started going really well. And so you don't know, and you just, you want to focus on that craft and that skill set, and your time will come. That's kind of my viewpoint, but that was my plan. I should have been a bit more strategic. I just kind of quit. I shifted my health insurance, and that was it. And,
well, it sounds like
you've
been
kind of a mess
about it for a while. And so,
I had.
that's the epitome of rule breaking. I love it. because it's like, it doesn't matter what the world tells you. It doesn't matter what everybody says is the normal standard way. I gotta find my own road. I gotta create my own journey. And so, okay, so I have a question for you about, because a lot of people who transition from a normal corporate job or 9 to 5 job, whatever, and then they go into being an entrepreneur, it's really hard for them to discipline themselves with their time. Because before, you have to be there at a certain time, you can't leave until a certain time, and all those hours you're at this location where there's kind of not a whole lot to do besides work. So now you're at home, or where do you work from? And how have you made that transition? How did you start to discipline yourself? Did you find that that was hard at all?
It wasn't for me. So I was a solutions consultant for the Fortune 500 companies that did enterprise sales. So I was actually a remote employee before COVID happened and before that stuff happened. So I was used to working from home.
Right.
It's a pretty high performance job. I was working 60 hours a week anyway. And, I'm curious. I like building things. Like I like working on my craft, like I said. So the structure piece or personal motivation is maybe a better way to put it. I've never really lacked. I'm a pretty high energy person. And I'd much rather, learn a new skill or watch some videos on YouTube about integrations on software. Maybe not so much anymore, maybe live streaming now, but then watch a TV show. And that's kind of always been me. But there's definitely that challenge of, it's up to you when you quit. And that's kind of what I was alluding to, where you don't have that safety net of your job anymore. So it's like you have to wake up early and you have to get all your tasks done. And it's totally up to you. Like you make your own income when you're an entrepreneur. And that could be amazing. And it can also be really scary. There's huge upside and there's huge downside to that. So I would say don't be an entrepreneur if you don't have that discipline. Like it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's awesome. It really is. It's amazing what you can do and what you can build in this world and people you can meet. But if you really don't have that discipline or you lack like some type of commitment, then, I think you're going to work more than ever when you quit that first year in entrepreneurship. It's like, you're not going to have free time.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be like a pessimist or anything, but you're going to be working a lot. You're going to be trying to figure things out. So if anything, you're going to have more work than before, and you better be ready to, for the rubber to meet the road. That's probably the best way I could put it.
Yeah. And probably the biggest difference is that, yes, you're working harder. Maybe you're working more hours, but it's stuff you're way more excited about, and you get to pursue your own dream, of course. So is there a certain thing, what's your schedule like? Is there a certain way that you say, okay, at this time I'm up, at this time I exercise? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I try to get up around 6:30. Sometimes it could be earlier, sometimes it could be later. That seems to be a good time frame for me. And then I try to be in bed by 10:30. So I do have a pretty good consistent routine. And then in between there, it really depends on if I have calls with clients, if I have live streams. Ideally, like my perfect day would be like I would go and work out somewhere around the mid-afternoon. So I have the bulk of my morning. I talk to customers. I do all the intellectually stimulating stuff that's a little bit more challenging. I go kind of take a break at the gym. And for me, the gym for me is kind of like a release. Like I very much love fitness. And then, I'll come back and I'll work on stuff for the next few hours. On stuff that's not as challenging as like copywriting or maybe answering emails and just doing changes to like funnels and just stuff that's a little bit easier. And then I kind of prepare for the next day. So I'm definitely very scheduled and organized, which could be good and bad because I kind of put myself in a box sometimes. But before I go to bed, I make sure I know what I'm doing the next day, because that really just helps me wake up and kind of have a clear path of what I need to do rather than think about it. And then in the morning, I make another list, I readjust stuff. So that's kind of my schedule. I work out in the afternoon, and that's pretty much it. I do my affirmations. I am big on affirmations. I like writing that stuff down and starting my morning with gratitude. I do believe in that. And, I'll break out periodically throughout the day. A big thing that's really helped me, in addition to just, eating healthy and fitness, has been going for walks, actually. So I could sit at my computer screen for 6 hours and not really think twice of it. And I find that my productivity kind of decreases at a certain point. So I'll actually schedule in on my calendar, walks for like 15 minutes and just go out and, catch the sunshine and maybe go get a coffee or something if I'm in a different city, and go for walks. I probably do 2 to 3 walks a day. And then there's some days that I just don't get walks, and, the schedule is just packed out with calls. So.
Cool. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to want to talk about is how you close your clients. What are some strategies and tactics that you use that help you close your clients? But since we're on like balance in your life and time management and all that stuff, first, before we go there, let's talk about what you had mentioned, that you're single. What about relationship? Because one thing entrepreneurs have a really hard time with is balancing that with time for a relationship. Do you want to have a relationship? And if you do, how do you make sure that you have time for that?
I mean, sure, I'm always looking for someone that'd be great, but they'd have to understand kind of how I am and who I am and what I'm doing at this point in my life. So timing's a big aspect of it. Previously, I had great relationships in my I'm only 20 college, but I was always very, very focused on, in school it was chemical engineering, and I wanted to do research and I wanted to go get this great corporate job. And, I did, but I put in a lot of time. So I don't really think there is a balance. And if someone's that great that I'd be willing to kind of, allocate some time, that just sounds so terrible to say it that way, right? Like I need to schedule them.
I don't think it's terrible, because I think you're being realistic.
The truth. Yeah.
Relationship
Yeah,
takes
it's
time
the
and effort,
truth.
and it's got to be the person that's going to be the right fit for what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm happy to move my time around, and I definitely enjoy having good nights and going out and exploring places, and it'd be great to have someone to do that with. But if I find that person, awesome. I mean, I definitely am meeting people in different cities, so we'll see. That's kind of my approach, is that it's going to happen when it happens, and hopefully someone sweeps me off my feet. But they're probably going to have to understand that I am an entrepreneur and I have huge goals and ambitions right now. And, I'm willing to work if they're willing to work. So
well, it's so funny because
we'll see.
I wasn't even thinking about this, but it reminds me of when I was dating my husband. I had all these plans and goals, and I had everything planned out. And I thought, whenever I meet my knight in shining armor, then that will be great, but it'll probably be way far down the road. And then I met Roger, and very quickly it became, okay, none of those goals are even exciting or fun if I don't get to do it with him. And so that's
great. And that's how it should be. I mean, in my mind, my logical mind, I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to be like early 30s. Like, I'm just going to grind the next 5 years. I'm going to go see the world, live everywhere, meet people. It's going to be great. And then, maybe next week I find someone who is just amazing. So I hope that happens. I hope it happens, but we'll see.
Cool. Okay. So let's get into some business stuff. So I want to hear about closing, because you really haven't been at your business super long, but you obviously have a lot of skills that you gained from all the things you've done in the past. And yet you started closing sales, and you kind of mentioned, it took me a little longer than some people, but you're right. It's different for each person. How did you start closing sales? And teach us some of the steps that you did that will help the entrepreneurs who are listening.
It depends. See, you really need context on this situation. So like, I understood sales processes before I started, because I was in solutions consulting, and my job was to go and build demo solutions, to go pitch to companies and work with the account executives. So they kind of handled the relationship, but I was very much involved in the entire sales cycle, particularly towards the end. The goal was to build them a demo and close it. So I understood sales processes, and I kind of just started in the beginning, like, how do I acquire clients? How do I find customers? How do I get leads? And I just worked on that for like months. And then I focused on, okay, I was able to book out my calendar, and are these people even qualified? And then I started looking at conversions and my conversations, and there's a bunch of tools you can use for like conversational intelligence and stuff like that you go back and listen to your recordings, like, how could I get better? And that's kind of it. It was very much brute force, because I didn't know what the message was initially. I didn't know my target audience. I didn't know what would get people to hop on a call. I didn't know what would get them to hop up on a follow-up call. And so in the beginning, if you're really just starting out, my advice is as simple as just focus on booking out your calendar as much as possible. Talk to as many people as possible, because if you're not conversational, if you're not, excited to talk to, well, you're not going to make any sales, right? Like, you got to be likable. You got to be able to talk to people. And if you can't get people on a call for free to just talk about whatever it is that you're doing, you're probably not going to be able to sell them anything for a price. So that's what I did in the beginning. And then I pretty much figured out, who would be my ideal buyer. I hate to use these terms because it's so dynamic now. Things are changing. You never truly know, but I figured out who was kind of my audience, and, what was the initial message. And then I got a lot more direct, because then I started to get really confident in my solution. I had a couple testimonials and case studies. I knew that it worked, what I was pitching, and I didn't really have any competitors. And at this point, I have when I hop on a call, like, they're pre-qualified, like, they've seen a video. And, I don't think you need to focus on that initially, because it's just another thing that puts you in front of your sale. Like, you put all these systems and all this like stuff, And it just puts you, it gets in the way of you and your customer, like just having a real conversation. So in the beginning, I don't think that stuff's important, but now I have videos. I do have funnels. I've tested out a couple different like VSLs and what will get people to book a call when I send out a cold email. And then so they're pre-qualified. They know what the solution is. And at that point, we're just talking about their specific business. It's still kind of consultative selling. And I don't have like a script necessarily. I'm going to ask prospecting questions. I'm just trying to find out about their business in the beginning. And then, if it's a good fit, which it most likely is probably going to be a good fit because they're qualified, I'm just going to handle their objections in real time. And, that was an interesting turning point was when I was doing sales before in enterprise sales, the sales cycles were like a year long. So it's very different of a sales style than trying to close someone on a call. Like I also hate saying like trying to close. It just sounds so,
I know what you mean.
Like, yeah, but like providing value to someone so much that they're excited to get started with you. Maybe that's just like a better way to phrase it. And, but actually asking someone for like $5,000 and just not really thinking it was a different feeling, like, hey, my solution's $5,000. Like, what do you think? I don't say it that way, but and hearing it was uncomfortable in the beginning. It was uncomfortable to ask people for money, in those types of sums, even like $1,000 or $2,000 when I first was starting out on my offer. But you get better at just dealing with those objections. Like they say, oh, well, we have money allocated for some type of project, or, maybe they don't necessarily see the value. And you handle that objection and then you focus on the next one. Right. And so like, if it's a price thing, like they clearly don't see the ROI because everything's about ROI. And then I just handle and I proof out the ROI and I ask them, do they understand? Do they see the value? And they say yes. And then I move on to the next thing. Is there anything else that would prevent you from not doing this? Or is there anything else that you would want to see that would make this better for you? Or like very simple, direct questions. And that's how I focus on my sales calls.
That's really
I always make sure.
And one of the things I really love about what you said is that you call it a process. Most people think that the sales situation is an event, as if like somehow you're going to do this sales event right at the end, you're going to sell. No, it's a process. The entire time you're helping them feel like buying and finding out their pain points. So when you are talking to them, I can tell by what you're saying, obviously you're not pressuring them, but a lot of people have a hard time not pressuring the client. They don't know how to do it. And probably because they're uncomfortable at the beginning. So what are some techniques that you use? Like, for example, I'll just throw out a simple one that's kind of obvious, is that, like you said, you ask them questions. You're asking discovery questions, trying to find out what their needs are. What are some other things that you do?
Mm-hmm. So, I always have an outcome for the call. So like you said with the process, the first call is not really, now they're coming in pre-qualified. So the sales cycle is a little bit shorter, but in the beginning, when I was just hopping on calls with people, my sole purpose was to just conversate with them and find out more about them. And at some point in time, they're going to ask me questions about what I do. And, if I'm excited about what I do, they're probably going to be more interested in it. And then that would lead to a next call, which would be, so I always have an outcome for the call. I think that's the most important thing. Back to the sales scripts, and like, you can have all this stuff, but what's my number one reason for hopping on that call? And the initial sales call is not, it's to do a follow-up, because I don't really have like a canned solution. It kind of is, it's getting there. I have a course that is like in that, do it with me type of a model, but it is somewhat specific to their business. My solution is the same for the live streaming, but I want to have a follow-up, more detailed strategy type session where I can really map out everything and clearly position it for them so they can see exactly what they're getting. Because people are visual. And so that's kind of the first call. And then the second call would simply be, when are you ready to get started? In my mind, like, I'm trying to set a date. I'm really trying to collect a decision. That's the whole purpose of the outcome. And so they're either going to tell me, yes, they're ready, or no, they're not. And for what reasons? Maybe it's time. And so some of the sales I've had have taken 5 months, and some of them, the second call, they're closed inside of a week, and it's different for each person. And so that's why you have to have a process, and you need to have follow-ups, and you need to, know where people are at and what conversations you have with them. And you have to be on it. You have to be consistent and diligent with your sales. So,
because the truth still stands that the sale does not usually happen on the first encounter. It's almost always
never
the first encounter. So you have to have that follow-up strategy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for true sales, yeah, not like you. I think high pressure was the term you used, and that's like perfect. It's like I'm not pressuring people. I'm not afraid to ask them. Like I'm going to ask them very direct questions, just
Mhm.
to get a clear answer. Like how are they feeling? Where are they at? And that's where I was uncomfortable in the beginning. But then you realize that it's not pressuring them. Like no one can be mad at you if you're genuinely curious, and you're actually trying to help them. But yeah, if you're selling like a low level, not low level, like a course or something where you're trying to pressure people with psychology and get them to make these instantaneous decisions, it's different.
Yeah.
But when you're actually selling something and building relationships, it's going to take some time. It's going to be a process. So.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so there are a couple more things I want to go over before we are done here. And one of them is something that we were talking about at the beginning before we got started, before we went live. And it was about, talking about what is your passion. And one thing I really liked, number one, was your honesty, Nick, that you were saying, well, right now it's about building my business. People talk about wanting to serve their customer. What's interesting though, is that let me back up. So as we were talking this morning, or like before we got started, one of the things that Nick was saying was how he's got to focus on his business. And yeah, people talk about caring about their customer. Of course, he cares about his customer, but he's got to focus on growing the business right now because it's new enough. And so, but I thought how interesting that number one, how honest, because and one of the things I loved about that is that our perspective, not our perspective, our mission changes. And necessarily so, because sometimes your mission has to be about getting money on the getting food on the table. And so sometimes people tend to act like, oh well, if you're in it for the money, like somehow that's bad. Well, excuse me, but that is exactly what you need to be in it for, otherwise it's not a business. And so I love that you talked like that. But then, so I'm going to ask you about that, but as you listen to the answer, you guys, I want you to notice everything that you've said, Nick, so far. You talk about helping the customer, caring about the customer, making sure you get results for the customer. So it's interesting that even though you kind of feel like, okay, my focus is I've got to grow my business, it's still really all about the customer. But I want it to be clear because I think sometimes people try to shame entrepreneurs into thinking that because you're trying to make money and because you're trying to grow your business and 10 times your results or whatever it is you're trying to do, that somehow that's wrong. And so I loved your response. So talk about that with us for just a little bit.
Yeah. So initially you asked me, what I'm passionate about. And we talked about like how do I like helping people? And it's always about the customer. Like that is my only focus right now. And so is providing as much value to my customers as possible. There's actually not off topic, but there's a 1999 interview with Jeff Bezos, one of my favorite interviews. And this was it was a Time magazine. He was Time magazine person of the year. And I don't know if it was MSNBC or Fox or anything like that. And this guy talks about it. The entire interview, he just talks about exceptional customer service. And he's like, that's the only thing we're focused on is obsessing over the customer experience. And people weren't talking about customer experience in 1999. Like that's like a technology term now in like the late 2000s. But go watch it if anyone is watching this on like replay or something. It's very short and he talks about that, and it's all about the customer. Now, in terms of helping other people and like a bigger mission, well, I can't change the world. Like I'd love to help people. I'd love to give back. I'd love to inspire people and use my travel journeys to inspire people to go launch their own businesses. And I'd love to help them get started live streaming. But I can't do that if I'm not running the company, like you said. So, I just hired my second full-time VA, which is awesome. I have two full-time VAs, which is crazy to think about, right? Yeah, right. And it's like I have two people that are full-time reporting to me, and we're the growing mode. I'm going through growth pains, and I'm just kind of focused on the road in front of me. I have bigger aspirations. I'd love to launch, if I can launch enough live shows. I didn't really talk about what I'm doing, but then I can have my own TV network, and I'm producing the shows to build up to a TV, and that's a greater goal. But right now, it's just one foot in front of the other, and I'm very heads down, focusing on the projects that I'm launching and trying to deliver as much as possible to the customers that I do have to make sure that they're happy. So,
yeah, that's exactly where I want to go next is the whole live streaming. Tell us what it is you do, the results you get for your customers. I want to hear a couple of testimonials. I want to hear what exactly are you doing, and then teach our audience what are things that they can do, some of the basic steps they can do to help grow their own business this way.
Absolutely. So it kind of started 6 months ago. I launched a live stream show, and I was really just looking for a way to get content. So there's a lot of podcasts out there. And as an entrepreneur, as anyone who's trying to make marketing materials, just content is really the bottleneck. It's very time consuming. It's very resource intensive. And you're trying to be on multiple platforms, and it's just an absolute headache and it's an absolute mess. So I was like, what's the most efficient way that I can get content? And originally I thought it was going to be a podcast, and I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But I didn't like that you had to be on one channel, and all of my following was on regular social media channels. I didn't like the idea of building from scratch. So I decided to start live streaming because I could host it very much the same style as a podcast. And I also had that video component, and, following Gary V's like content pyramid method, it's very efficient to just take a 45-minute live stream, hence, my solution, and cut that up into 5 or 6 different clips, and you get enough content for that entire week. And so that's how it started. Yeah. I got my show sponsored after 11 episodes, not to give a specific rate, but for several grand a month. And I had friends that were podcasting.
Episodes?
After 11 episodes, right? It was good, but here's how I pitched it, and this is why I'm so all in for live streaming. So with podcasting, I don't want to go too into the details, but you're paid based on, let's say, per 1,000 downloads. Maybe you get $15 to up through $100 per 1,000 downloads, depending on how engaged your listeners are. And you need to have thousands of downloads an episode, which takes time to get there. Now, what people really care about is impressions. And here was the big kicker: is with a live, if video ads cost 5 to 50 times the rate. Like a TV commercial is significantly more expensive than a radio commercial. Right. So you could run the same show, same format, same interviews, but because you're live, you have the video component. So you simply just 5x or 10x the cost of your sponsorship than you would an audio ad, just by definition. So the medium of live streaming has more profit potential because it's a video, it's a video ad. It's more engaging. It's going to have higher conversions. So that was the first thing. Now, in terms of ramping up with growth, when you look at a live stream, there's no other type of content creation where you can simulcast to multiple platforms. I can live stream to LinkedIn, to Facebook, Instagram separate, and YouTube all at once. And if you get guests that have big networks, you actually don't need any type of big following initially, because you're going to leverage the guest network to share. And that's the cool thing with the live stream, is you can promote it in advance. So when you schedule live on LinkedIn and Facebook, it actually creates a live event in advance, and you get the guests to share it. So you simply tap into their network, and it's entirely, new audience that's never seen you. You leverage their following. You promote it. So that's the first touch point. And then you have the actual live, which is in real time. It's the most engaging type of content. You can ask questions. Kind of like what makes Clubhouse so great is that it's real time. I don't think it's the audio medium that makes Clubhouse so successful. I think it's because it's real time engagement. That's what people are seeking. Yeah. So you have that with the live. And then I repurpose all the content as you would any other type of Gary Vee style clip. I repost them on all the different channels. And, now that includes OTT channels like Apple TV and Amazon Fire TV. That stuff's kind of brand new, but those were just released where you can kind of distribute to those channels now. So super early on. And that's what I looked at. I looked at this amazing content system where you could actually live stream once a week, distribute to 20 different channels, get 5 different clips from 1 hour, and have no following. And what I pitched the sponsorship on was the aggregate impressions, because that's what they care about. So if I take those 5 clips, and let's say each clip gets 100 views, that's 500 views per week on each channel. Well, that's like, 3,500 views if you distribute it across all of your channels, right? Impressions, not including shares and the guests sharing it. And so it put me into that conversation of like, 3,500 downloads is typically what you need per podcast episode to even start having conversations about sponsorship. So I was able to get there week 1 or week 2 in impressions, and then I was able to charge 10 times the rate because it's a video ad. And that's the solution that I sold. And they loved it. And I got, that sponsorship, and I'm like, hey, I think I have something special here. So I just stopped doing all the agency stuff. And I started doing the exact same thing for other companies and individuals, is launching live stream shows, doing all the production, doing all the editing, setting all the software. I'm on the show right now behind the scenes, doing the transitions. And it's really just an amazing marketing tool. It's a great way to get content. It's very efficient. It's a great way to distribute content. And so instead of focusing on all these different types of content creation and blogging and all these different strategies, we focus on 1 live per week. And that's your only focus. You can still connect with your customers and be omnipresent and pop up in their feed every day, so you can stay relevant with 1 hour per week. So I also try and go and pitch the sponsorship to produce an ROI. That is the value, is we go and secure a sponsorship. And even if they break even, I just want to just point this out, from a marketing perspective, what's really cool is even if you break even on the sponsorship, you're generating all these tens of thousands of impressions. And so it's like free marketing. And that's the goal. Everyone thinks of making a profit off of the sponsorship, which is great if it's just a show. But if you're a business, if I can say, hey, it's $5,000 a month, but we're going to get a sponsorship from these small little companies, and that's going to be in $3,000 or $4,000. Well, they're only paying $1,000 a month to drive tens of thousands of impressions, which is amazing for them. And they're retaining the organic growth because it's all organic. So they're just building up following after following, and they can always tap into them. So it's a pretty cool solution, but that's what I do for live streams.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So a lot of people think that when you talk about live stream, they think it's just like Zoom. So explain in more detail so that people understand what you're talking about, because are you talking about Facebook Live? Are you talking how do you do your streams?
So there's two different types there's a software that you need to use to connect to any of the live streaming platforms. So Facebook Live is a very big one. That probably has the largest audience for live. LinkedIn is probably the second right now. I think LinkedIn has the most potential as a platform, especially for entrepreneurs and business owners, because most people are qualified. There's a ton of organic reach there still, and you can live stream. You have to get approved by LinkedIn to live stream, though. It's still in beta. You choose a software. There's two that I'm going to recommend. One of them is the company that sponsors me, and then the other one is the one that I started with. StreamYard is great. StreamYard's good. It's very simple. I started out using StreamYard, and it's just very simple to get up and running. You log in. It's very simple and intuitive to use. The other company is called Switcher Studio, and that's who ended up sponsoring me. And I love Switcher. It's still very simple, just like StreamYard, but it just gives you additional things that you can do. I found out very quickly that StreamYard doesn't really give you any customability with your live stream, which is good and bad, so you can't really stack elements on top of each other, and there's just not a lot of more functionality to it. So with Switcher, especially, it's built for iOS. So literally you can stream just from your phone, and that's all you need. You don't need tons of equipment. And it's actually a switcher board where you just touch to switch to different scenes. So you set up your show in advance on your phone, and you can just scroll down, and every transition that you want is already pre-put in there. And when I say a live stream, think of the Fox News channel or ESPN. I know that sounds crazy, but the overlays and the designs are very simple now to replicate. And that was the cool thing with live streaming that I noticed during the pandemic is the production caught up, where the regular creator without a deep technical skill set can actually reproduce an ESPN channel. And I thought that was amazing. I thought that the production level got to a point where it could be commoditized almost, because anyone could kind of tap in and do these designs. So it's very simple to put these overlays. And that's what I'm trying to tell people to do is imagine having your own TV show. You can essentially do that now. I'm not talking about on Netflix yet, but there's nothing stopping you from going and launching your own TV show, branding it with these overlays, which takes 30 minutes, and just starting to book people and starting to just run your own show and using social to distribute it. You asked about the platforms, I'm sorry, but Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, you can stream live. You can stream to your website. I mean, that's a channel. And with the simulcasting, streaming to multiple places at once, I mean, you could stream to 30 places at once if you have the network and places to do it. So Apple TV, this is more advanced, but you can stream to OTT platforms right now. This is newer, past couple of weeks that this is becoming real. So you could launch your own Amazon Fire TV app, your own Apple TV app, your own Roku app, and stream to them and use that as a place to distribute your content and have videos live there. Does that answer your question about the live streaming?
Yes, that's awesome. And so what would you say are the first steps for someone?
Just get started going live.
And so would you say, because some people say, well, do your video, but only stream it to one place because it gets too complicated. It's going to take you too long to get started. What would you say?
I agree with that. I agree with selling like one product or one show, let's say, for one channel, I think it keeps it simple. I started on Instagram. So I did my first 11 episodes from Instagram, pitched the solution, got sponsored, and then tested out the other ones. But with Switcher and StreamYard, like when you do those show, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't take any additional effort to stream to these other channels. It's just simply just checking the box. Right. Now you're not, and so why not? Why not put it there? Why not see? I mean, if you're not checking the comments and stuff like that, I mean, I guess that's fine. You want to focus your efforts on one channel, but for me, it was like it's not any additional setup. It's literally a toggle button that you check.
The two platforms.
Yeah, might as well stream everywhere, like be everywhere, get your face in front of as many people as possible and market yourself. So, but yeah, I would focus more on just getting started live streaming, and there's no reason not to broadcast it out to, your Facebook or to LinkedIn and YouTube.
So what would you say to people who, because I'm sure you've heard this a ton. Well, I'm horrible on camera.
Right. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just get over it.
Get over yourself. That's what I'm always
seriously. That's the cool thing though, is that I was not comfortable on camera. I'm still not that comfortable on camera. I'm not like the most personal, I'm like outgoing, but I'm not like this media personality, right? And I think that's like bite the bullet. And if you want to be a marketer, you're going to have to get comfortable speaking on camera. So just pick up your phone and go live on Instagram and just push the button and don't even think about it. And it's going to be nerve wracking and you're going to be super nervous. And eventually you'll get comfortable with it. And after the first couple episodes, you'll get comfortable at speaking to people. And I think it's really going to help. Like, that's what I love about live streaming for early entrepreneurs, is that it helps you figure out how to distribute content. It helps you, craft your message. It helps you find your voice, which is really hard for people. It helps you get comfortable on camera. It helps you get comfortable talking to people that might be of higher influence than you, actually trying to book bigger guests, and it kind of does all of that. And it does it in a simple way. So, if you're not comfortable on camera, I would just say live streaming is not going anywhere, and just get over it and go live. And after a couple episodes, you'll be fine, right? I mean, everyone started somewhere.
The comedian who is so hilarious and has jokes for an hour that have you rolling in your seats, they did not get those, and all of a sudden they just happened to say something funny. They went to the nightclubs where they were at the dives, and they said all these jokes, and only one of them made people laugh. And
no one laughed, exactly.
Figuring it out. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell me straight up, what results do you get for your clients? Give us a couple of testimonials. What have you done for them? Do you get them followers? Do you get them income? Do you get what? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it's followers and income. So the first show that I launched, we're going to pitch the sponsorships right now. So I launched this new live stream offer. I just went into entrepreneurship 9 months ago, doing the freelancing thing. I came up with this live stream idea at the end of December. Okay. So we're going into 5 months. Then I booked out calls. I pitched to people, closed the first show. And that's going great. So I'm just reaching out to sponsors this week to secure a sponsorship. And I think we can get, I don't know, between $4,000 and $6,000. I could be wrong, but I'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, and in terms of growth, we've had, I don't know what the percentages were, but it's in that neighborhood of, let's say 100 to 200 views per clip, and several thousand views per week, including all the resharing, and that's how it should be after we've done 7 episodes at this point, 1 a week. And so I have 2 more shows launching this week, and then I rebranded my show. Too. What was it, like 3 weeks ago? I've done 2 more episodes with that, and it's in that same neighborhood. Let's say I get 200 views a clip. But that's kind of it. I'm still in the early stages, still launching the pilot programs. And now I'm just speaking to companies because I know the growth works. I know that I can execute on it with the virtual assistants. And that was the hardest part, was just being able to really execute the system, because it was just this new idea that no one was doing. And everyone's happy so far. So that's the most important thing.
What's exciting to me is I've been in this world now for a while, and I haven't really seen, I don't know of someone else doing exactly what you're doing.
Oh, that's great. Glad to hear it. For the record, the podcast, they hit under top 50. This is the first show that I launched. They rolled their show from a podcast up into this live stream. They did start ranking. I think they're like 120th for management in the UK, and somewhere around like 200 or 300 in the US, which is cool.
Yeah,
And so
such few episodes.
yeah, well, they've done, I want to say 40 episodes. We've only done 7 live streams, and we use that to drive traffic to the podcast. So that's kind of a way to get people to acknowledge the podcast. And all of these clips, these sub clips that we're getting impressions for, are all driving back on the back end to the podcast. And so we've seen the growth on the charts, and it's starting to rank well. In India, it broke top 50, which I don't know how competitive that market is, but
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
well, one thing I do know about India is they have one of the largest markets.
They do. Yeah, a billion people. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That is very cool. Okay, any last words for our audience? If you had one thing you could share, I'm like, okay, what is your one maybe something that you wish you had known when you started, or that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I asked the exact same question on my show. It would be simply to get started and don't overthink it. If I could go back and just tell myself to just launch a business because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, to just roll my hands up and get dirty, it would just be do it sooner and, be a rule breaker. Don't listen to society. I did that for years, and it wasn't necessarily bad, but I went through the whole cookie cutter route of, I'm going to study chemical engineering, I'm going to do research, I'm going to go get this consulting job. And it just left me kind of unfulfilled and, wishing that I had done things more on my own terms when I was younger. So, the world's not that big and scary. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go form an LLC today and start live streaming.
Cool. Love it. Okay. Thank you, Nick. That was not only fun to talk with you, but it was also inspiring and educational. So thank you for that. All right.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. And you guys, make sure you, in the comments, make sure you let him know how much you appreciate his information, his wisdom, the things he's shared with you, because that's some pretty powerful stuff that you are learning from someone who's already been there and has a lot of background, not only in the entrepreneurial world, but in the regular, corporate world, to help combine and gain some of those skills and some knowledge of tips and tricks to get started and to do this right. So thank you, Nick. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. You have a great day.